In this video, let's mesh model a nice Pottery Barn wine glass. And to do this, we're going to, as a new technique, use an image of the wine glass in order to trace a single point around the outside contour, and then use this spin modifier to spin it around the z-axis to create the glass. I love all the internal reflections and refractions going on with this. So first step, let's get an image. So head over to Google Images and type wine glass, and I picked out this particularly expensive one. I can't believe $84 for a single glass, but there it is. So, okay, so right click on the image, then save image as, and choose where you're putting it, desktop in my case, and hit save. Oops, and minimize everything. And now let's get started here. So let's go File New and reload a startup file. And the first thing I want to do is delete the cube. So hit the letter X and delete. Then go into front ortho mode by hitting number 1 on your keypad, number 5 on the keypad. And then I want to minimize the screen and grab the image of the glass and drag it right onto the viewport. Then maximize the window, and very good. So the image aligned nicely with the z-axis. That's the most important thing here. Okay, you can see this is z-axis, the blue line. Okay, so next, what we have to do is get a single point that we can extrude, and I'm not aware of a single point available in Blender, so we are going to add a plane and then delete 3 of those vertices. So Shift A, Mesh Plane. Let's rotate that on the x-axis 90 degrees, so that's R90, RX90, and enter. Tab over or click over to edit mode, hit the letter A to deselect, right click and hold shift on 3 of the vertices, then the letter X to delete them, and left click vertices. So there's our lone little point here. So right click on that and hit the letter G, and come on down here to somewhere like in here and click on the z-axis, and then E for extrude, and I'm coming straight out to the outer contour here. And then I want to take a series of small steps as I hit the letter E and drag it with my mouse. And where there's a sharper curve, you want to take smaller steps, and when the curve is a little more spread out, you can take longer steps. Don't worry if it's a little bit bumpy or inexact, because we're going to be using a subdivision surface modifier, which will smooth everything out. So I'm just going along now and getting the main idea set here. Now what I want to do is create a wall thickness, the inside of the glass. So I'm just coming straight over and then mirroring the, making a line that's parallel to the outside edge. And this will be the thickness of the glass here. Okay, so the series of points extends then from the z-axis straight out to the outer contour, follows this outside contour nicely, wraps around, and arrives back at the z-axis. Great, so we're ready to spin this. So we're still in edit mode. I'm going to hit the letter A a couple of times in order to select all the points. Then click over here, spin, which is under your mesh tools. If that's closed, you can just toggle that open. And what do we have? A little craziness here. So what we have to do is modify this down here. So I'm going to put 36 steps, and instead of 90 degrees, we want to spin it in a full 360. So put that, enter, and one more modification. Down under the axis, we want to spin it on the z-axis, not the y, so I'm going to put that to 0. And good. It looks good, but I'm going to put 1 in the z anyway. Okay, great. Next, we're going to come back out to object mode and right-click to select your glass and come over to the modifier wrench here and add a modifier subdivision surface and put the view to 2 and then click smooth shading here, and that should be enough to give us a very decent smooth glass here. Okay, as long as it's still selected here, I'm going to hit apply, and then I'm going to add a material. So click the material orb and click new, and this always is a good time to switch from Blender Render to Cycles Render. Then click Use Nodes, click Diffuse, and click Glass. Now the color, if I click on that and take its value all the way up to the top, it'll make for a prettier, clearer glass instead of a sort of a gray glass. So the value is all the way up at the top. And I'm going to leave the color white so that we have a clear glass as in the Pottery Barn glass. Alright, so zoom out and let's add a plane in here. So I'm going to left click, Shift A, Mesh Plane, oops, and scale it to 100, why not? Enter, and let's see, so right click on the light, and I'm going to leave it as a point light and make that 3, and then click Use Nodes and Strength. We'll come back and tweak this, but I'm going to start with 4000. Okay, next I'm going to hit N, and I want to lock my camera to view, so check that on, and then get rid of this menu with the letter N again, and hit 0 on your numpad, and then we can pan and rotate and see what we've got here. Okay. So right here is I'm looking from the camera point of view back at the glass in the viewport, and perhaps we'll move yeah, we're good. That's interesting right there. I'm picking up the glass in the background here. Let's see what happens under rendered and see how things are shaping up. Okay, so that disappears, no problem. Alright, I'm going to add another plane and put a light on it, spotlight, to give this more interest so that we get more refractive qualities of the glass. So come back here and hit solid, hit 0 to get out of camera mode, zoom out. So here's the camera on the right, and here's the light right here. So I'm going to put a plane vertically behind this. So left click here, Shift A, mesh plane, rotate on the x-axis, so that's R, X, 90, enter, and then S for scale, and just scale it up here. So you can see what we've got. Move it over, perhaps here. Yeah. Looking at it from the overhead point of view, here's number 7 on your numpad. Here's the light. And there's the camera. Okay, so why don't we put another another light in here. So I'm going to left click, excuse me, Shift A, lamp, and I'm going to make it a spotlight. And what we're going to do is rotate it. So I'm going to hit the letter R and rotate it onto the little backdrop that I created. And spread it a little wider. So under the the size here, I'll take the size up. And on this size, instead of 0.1, I'm going to give it maybe 3. And for strength, let's start with 2000, and again, we'll tweak it as we go along. So let's see how this is shaping up by going over to rendered and spinning around. Let's look through the camera. So size, I'm going to bring it back down. Spotlight. So I noticed that the spot wasn't on the background, so I'm going to the number 7 overhead view, and look where it is, way over here. So let's bring that back in, and let's take a look how that is. All right, and then rendered. That's more like it. Okay, so once again, I'm bringing the size back up so I don't have such a harsh circle here. So let's try number 3 here, and that's a better diffuse glow. And the strength, bring it back down. The world button, I'm going to make it a little darker. And then I'm going to hit 0 again for the camera and pan and rotate to see, orbit around. While I'm thinking about it too, click on the camera icon and change the proportions of X and Y here. So I'm going to make that 1600 and Y 1600 and 100%. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty good in terms of a simple setup. Orbit around to see sort of what you want to feature. If you wanted to make the backdrop bigger or smaller, that's up to you. Let's see. So In terms of rendering this, because of the glass, you may pick up some noise. So you can click the second tab and turn on denoising and just use the default render value. Hit F12 and I'll pause it here. And as it was starting to render, I hit escape a few times and then changed it over to GPU compute and started the render again, and everything crashed. So that's a good lesson always, to save your work before you render it with file save as a blend file, and then go ahead and render it. So I'm going to leave it at that. The results are very, very good, and good luck, and see you on the blog.